In the modern day, English-speaking audiences have it pretty nice when it comes to accessibility to Japanese games. It's rare any new title from a notable publisher gets left unlocalized, with most often releasing on the same day in most regions. So it's a bit strange to see Nintendo, one of the largest traditional entities in gaming, seemingly leaving something untouched for the Western market. The title in question is Buddy Mission Bond, but this isn't some tiny budget download, online-only experience, experimental product release, or any other far out of the ordinary situation. It's a full retail release with 30 to 70 hours of content, extensive voice acting, a heavy emphasis on presentation, and an immense amount of depth to its story. While it may not be available in English today, thankfully there are ways you can enjoy the game still. I'll let you know exactly what that entails once we get there. First, let's focus on what this game actually is. Buddy Mission Bond feels reminiscent of adventure-style games of the DS era, such as the Ace Attorney series, and to some extent, Nintendo's own published franchises, like Hotel Dusk. You play as Luke, a police officer attempting to track down a criminal organization called Discard, which has found a way to pull zombie-like behavior out of humans. Luke is far from a hard-boiled detective like a Kyle Hyde from Hotel Dusk. He's a charming, kind-hearted cop following in his adoptive father's footsteps. He's also quite the nerd, glorifying kids' TV shows and gawking over celebrities. His exaggerated reactions, facial expressions, as well as voice acting make him really easy to read and very likable. However, none of this gets in the way of his pursuit of justice, saving lives, and trying his best to live up to the hero title his father had. This tale essentially plays out through a linear story as the player interacts with a colorful cast along the way. We'll get to the more game-like elements here in a bit, but these chapter-to-chapter conversations are the core progression. It's very text-heavy, yet packed with voice acting, while relying on its motion manga/graphic novel presentation to emphasize the events on screen, including physical actions, character reactions, as well as highlighting other general environmental elements. While far from unique to Buddy Mission Bond, it excels by introducing these constantly. Even if there's no specific graphic to convey something, a flurry of on-screen movement with other visual tricks does the work to at least suggest physical changes in the world. No one thing happens without some visual or audio representation. Though Buddy Mission Bond doesn't just have the player clicking through this experience, it does a lot to give them something to interact with. There's the lower hanging fruit of the genre, with searching areas for clues, performing QuickTime events, and prompting button presses to help make an interaction more engaging. But what stands out are the investigations along with the infiltration segments. Luke will often need to sneak through various facilities. To do so, he must gather information ahead of time to determine his path. The player explores a city map that lets them talk to individuals or investigate certain areas. These details are automatically recorded in a journal where they start to populate potential routes. There are a limited number of rounds to investigate, and Luke's stamina drains as he travels, so the player needs to plot out his movements in an effective manner. This is where things take a visual turn, going to 3D environments where the player can navigate down the routes they've identified. This is far from an action game. The areas aren't fully realized buildings to explore. It's more of a fancy coat of paint for the player to utilize the information as well as items they've found, while also completing short challenges by overcoming QuickTime events and solving puzzles. These sections can sometimes culminate into boss fights where the player must complete a series of gimmick-based QuickTime events against a foe. A nice touch is that sometimes these are combined with other elements that require information found during the investigation scene, helping the player further damage a boss or turn the tide in their favor. These are typically the finale of a story arc. From there, it repeats. Go through a lot of dialogue, investigate the area for clues, then infiltrate the facility. But wait, who are those guys? Companions? Villains? Lovers? All of the above? So far, I focused on Luke. He's definitely the eyes of the player here. These other three guys are very important though. Also very handsome. But very important too. And handsome too. Over the initial chapters, Luke is introduced to a variety of unlikely companions. The Phantom Beast Aaron, a hot-headed jewel thief, Mokuma, a drunken womanizer who is a retired ninja, and Chelsea, an obsessive man who takes pleasure in manipulating others through various techniques, including hypnotism. Together, they're known as Team Bond. Each has their own expertise and skills that complement each other for both investigations as well as infiltrations, The player will pair two characters together. Their specialties are needed to gain information or complete tasks, hence the buddy mission part of the name, which the title leans into with its menus labeled with things like buddy select or the game proclaiming nice buddy when the player successfully pairs two for certain events. Opportunities to make correct choices, solve puzzles, or execute an action are spread throughout the adventure, which fills the player's hero gauge if done successfully. The latter two are pretty self-explanatory. QuickTime events appear randomly, while puzzles will ask the player to apply their collected knowledge in various ways. But being prompted with choice selections are probably the most diverse and common player interactions. The simplest form of these are memory checks, asking the player to recall story details such as someone's name, who performed an action, or what occurred. However, context-specific ones are the focus here, as the player will frequently need to choose who would be the best to investigate for specific information. Luke is an expert on sweets and popular culture, Aaron's hot-headed nature resonates with street punks, Mokuma can pull information out of people at a bar, and Chelsea can build rapport with those who appreciate the fine arts. This all plays into how the player handles their investigation planning, as only two can be selected per round, so plotting out a path where each character can hit the most points of interest while being effective with movement becomes much more complicated depending on who is needed where. The game is generous with helping the player make the correct choices, so rarely is being able to actually proceed an issue. Wrong answers ultimately result in a drop in the player's hero gauge, which only determines their rank at the end of each mission. This then unlocks special optional events for them to view. Like its abundant use of visual representation of actions in its story, Buddy Mission Bond is obsessed with story details. Many things that appear seemingly random in the core narrative will have some dedicated segment explaining how or why that event occurred. This can sometimes be as straightforward as to giving the reason why, during a botched infiltration, a crane slams into the side of a building, helping the team escape. But they also can give core details about the characters and what drives their motivation. Seemingly every significant choice someone makes will often link back to these optional segments, which gives full treatment into the specifics of why something was said or why some action was taken. The most important of these are the buddy episodes, which pair two of the four team members. They give additional insights into the connections between them. While technically optional, I view these as essential due to their impact on the character relationships, which is the most critical aspect of this game. Each character has an immense amount of baggage. Luke's adoptive father was killed in the line of duty, Aaron grew up in a war-torn country, Mokuma was exiled from his home village, and Chelsea has been repeatedly betrayed by those closest to him. If there's any one thing that Buddy Mission Bond prioritizes over everything else, it's how each of these team members make a connection to one another. Some of these are simpler relationships with interactions focused on single gimmicks, like Luke and Mokuma bonding over food, or Aaron and Chelsea aggressively teasing one another. These events often end up addressing struggles of their past as well as the present. Each team member also essentially has a soulmate in the group where the connection goes much deeper. Luke and Aaron are treated as the leading pair as they struggle to find what it means to be a hero, who to trust, whether to accept the sacrifice of others, and when not to compromise. It's a bit straightforward, though the contrast in their dynamic, with Luke's stiff, logical nature pitted against Aaron's unchained aggression, makes their extreme differences in actions entertaining conflicts, while also making for some heartwarming scenes when they actually do come together. The other two, Chelsea and Mokuma, have a pure versus kind of a dirty, twisted aspect to their relationship. Mokuma, while a sloppy old man, is cool-headed, with a heart of gold and a willingness to sacrifice anything to save another. This conflicts with Chelsea's need for physical perfection, while internally having chaotic, twisted obsessions that often come at the expense of others' well-beings. It's a high-tension, turbulent relationship as they ride the line of almost killing each other to having come-to-earth moments as they work out the emotional pains of each other's past and how they treat others. These scenes between the core team members are well crafted, frequently ending on warm notes of how two very different people have come closer to one another. And even with the drama, Buddy Mission Bond rarely stops having fun with these interactions, often being unafraid of injecting humor, whether that be the player making an odd decision in a serious moment, or a character just trying to break the tension. I just want to take a second to say one of my biggest fears with this video is that I won't find the right words to stress this aspect's importance. I mostly talk about mechanics and structure in games, so expressing this is a bit out of my wheelhouse. I'm not saying Buddy Mission Bond is unique in its goals. There's no denying that most other stories aim to hit similar beats. What stands out to me is the intensity of these scenes and the extreme extent these companions are bonded together, then also torn apart. I think Chelsea in particular is a really fascinating element here, getting to see how essentially a broken madman, constantly on the edge of abusing or sometimes even killing his team, can also mend their hearts. Yet, despite how twisted he can be, they also can mend his, all while still retaining what makes his chaotic nature so enjoyable. Most of the story is spent on these relationships over everything else. Often these guys even have some romantic interest with other characters, but none of those even come close to the effort put into exploring the bonds between these team members. It's melodramatic, with high highs and deep lows. However, I wouldn't have it any other way. Maybe a part of my respect is out of some ignorance. The title is developed by Ruby Party, a team within Koei Tecmo dedicated to making romance games for women, but for all intents and purposes, none of their stuff has been localized, so this approach may be standard for them. This obviously has a bit less of a romantic focus, though it definitely feels like the developers are egging on the fans, to which the fan base has definitely responded by happily shipping off these boys on love boats. Anyways, I just felt like it was important for me to highlight that aspect in case I came up short. Alright, enough about the handsome men, back to the video game. While the relationship between the cast of 4 are definitely the most important aspect of Buddy Mission Bond, it doesn't skimp elsewhere. In pursuit of the previously mentioned criminal organization, Discard, the team travels from an Americanish-style city overseas to a futuristic casino-style metropolis that borders a sleepy Japanese-like village. The initial city is more or less a tutorial zone. The latter two areas, Blossom and Micah respectively, are key to the central plot. Much time is spent on fleshing them out, with beautifully drawn set pieces dense with visual details that often ties into the storytelling. There's also an exploration of each of their citizenry, with many seemingly filler characters often returning for reoccurring roles that build out stories for them even if they have minimal interactions with the actual team. The degrading relationship between the two communities is the central backdrop here. As with the members of Team Bond, the theme of people bonding together is spread throughout each nook and cranny of this game. What happens to those without others, the struggle in building connections, the effects of shattered companionships, and what it means to repair a bond with another are the connective tissue to every story point, from the bottom layer of two brothers fighting up to the relationships between the citizens of Blossom and Micah itself. This obsessive focus on one angle can make individual moments feel shallow, but how the game intertwines those points with every other detail is what adds its depth and builds its world. The game is incredibly energetic in displaying these events, using a mix of the previously mentioned techniques during the standard gameplay, along with the partially and fully animated sequences. Many settings are also very flashy, with entertainment districts, air cruises, stage shows, etc. And one of the main secondary characters, Suisun, is an idol, so music is a large part of the experience too. A neat benefit of Buddy Mission Bond's infiltration segments is it lets you explore some of these areas in 3D as well, so you can see the backstage of a show, an underwater theme park, a Japanese-style death trap castle, and more. Navigating these areas feels a bit stiff and doesn't have the same level of polish as other parts of the game, but it's another element that anchors you in the world. All of these layers come together to build an adventure full of personality, humor, and depth. I just can't read any of it. As I mentioned, I cannot read much Japanese, so while I have confidence in what I took away from the game's story, I'm sure some of those points are fuzzy and others would think my interpretation isn't necessarily valid. Unfortunately, Nintendo has not shown any interest in localizing this title into English. Still, as of this video, the Switch is very much alive, so there still could be a chance. They have translated it into Korean as well as Chinese, both simplified and traditional, so if you can read those, you're in luck. Do that. I am not in luck, as I imagine many of you are not as well. So if Buddy Mission Bond never gets localized or unofficially translated, let's talk a bit about what that experience is like playing it without knowing the language. If you've heard me talk about playing Japanese games in the past before, a lot of this will sound familiar, but I'm going to go in a bit more depth about how to actually put things together. There are some key points to look for in a game if you won't be using one of its supported languages. Titles that feature a lot of voice acting, a focus on presentation, as well as displays text are great candidates for this approach. Thankfully, Buddy Mission Bond exceeds all those requirements. The benefit of the first two aspects are pretty straightforward. Voice acting can give you the feeling of emotion and intent from a character. Visuals help paint what's in the environment, what's happening, what is someone doing. When we look at the third bit of criteria, the text being on screen, you might think that would not be super valuable since you can't read it. I'm a big believer that if you don't have commitment to learn one of the supported languages, machine translation can be a handy tool for enjoying games. To be clear, what you're reading from the tool is not a replacement for an actual translation. You will rarely ever get a proper sentence out of these tools. If you do, a lot of the flair will be stripped of it, if it's even accurate. So how do you use these elements to get an understanding of the story? You take everything and combine it in your mind to build out the essentials of a scene. Who is speaking? How are they speaking? What's in their hand? Who is touching who? What are the key phrases that appear in the text you have? Are there alternate or similar words than the ones presented to you that may have different meanings that better fit the scene? It's also important to know what information should be thrown away. If something from the machine translation doesn't make sense based off your knowledge of a character or the context of a scene, ignore it or store it in your mind for later in case information comes to clarify it. Once you have all those pieces, you need to move things around and fill in the blanks. This isn't about making up story points, it's about using what you know of each person to find their voice while connecting all other known details to build the narrative with what you have. How that manifests from there, I think depends on how you process information. You can add knowledge to your mental database or build out the most likely dialogue in your head line by line. I do both, honestly. This is something that happens on the fly. You're likely not going to be sitting there handwriting out a scene. Get what you can and keep moving, even if that means coming away from a conversation largely unsure of the specifics. Your assumptions won't be 100% correct. There will be times you won't get the purpose of a scene. You must keep an open mind that as you learn new information, that may change some of your understanding. And with enough details, you'll be able to start seeing a picture come together. This isn't something that works with every single video game. If anything, most others you try will come up short on specifics. Thankfully, Buddy Mission Bond has the massive benefit of being written in a seemingly straightforward style, with exaggerated deliveries along with heavy emphasis on visual information. It also doesn't trust the player to fully retain details, often utilizing flashbacks or directly spelling out story connections to the player. I actually anticipate this over-explaining may hurt the game if it ever comes over, as even without a proper translation, some story points and puzzles come off as too spelled out. The puzzles are more fun distractions rather than the focus anyways, though as a weird benefit, I probably found them more satisfying to solve given the language barrier. However, all of this adds up to probably the most friendly experience I've had in interpreting a game in another language. If you're patient, persistent, as well as dedicated, I think you'll be able to get close to the experience I had at least. With the length of the title, you'll have plenty of time to work out the details. I'm sure some people will disagree and think I haven't experienced Buddy Mission Bond, which is fine. It's difficult for me to say how close my interpretation is, but it's a piece of entertainment, so I won't stress too much about whether I perfectly understood every single detail. Thankfully, the game is also very generous with saving, so if you ever do need to roll back due to a failed choice or a puzzle you couldn't understand, it's fairly easy to do so. Though if you stick with it, I can't imagine anything will prevent you from finishing the story. I always encourage making multiple save files as backup, though even if you fail selections with no convenient way to roll back, you can replay chapters later. Repeating them is usually more for 100%ing the game, which can be a little tedious with investigations and infiltrations needing to be played multiple times. Still, bringing new character pairs for missions provides new flavor text to enjoy. If you want to try my approach, the Japanese eShop has a free demo where you can check out the first 2 chapters. There are hours of playtime in it, so you'll be able to tell if you're comfortable with this approach. Give it a shot, see if it's right for you. For many, I know that approach will never be appealing, for good reason, as machine translation is cumbersome and unreliable. There are a lot of foggy moments as you try to piece together the story in a way you wouldn't need to if you could actually read it. If you're just looking to have some fun, this probably sounds like too much of a headache. Will Buddy Mission Bond ever get localized? It's hard to say. While Nintendo did bring over the somewhat similar Famicom Detective Club on the Nintendo Switch, Buddy Mission Bond is significantly longer and likely requires much more graphical work. I wouldn't put it past Nintendo opening it up to Koei Tecmo to self-publish it over here. That being said, games made by Ruby Party seem to rarely ever get English releases as is. Though I think Buddy Mission Bond has an appeal that could extend outside their usual audience, even if it is still focused on charming and handsome men. If you're from the future where this game has been localized, please take me with you, though I personally can say I had a fantastic experience either way. It has slowly climbed to the top of my list as one of my favorite Switch releases, if not my favorite. Whatever the case is, there's no denying this is an incredibly realized world with a heavy commitment to exploring its characters to the fullest extent. It doesn't waste one bit of detail, even referencing the title's name repeatedly. Whether it's today or sometime in the future, I really hope you can enjoy Buddy Mission Bond along with the relationships it builds. If you know someone who would love this game, or these beautiful men, I'd appreciate it if you could share this video with them. Maybe leave a like or comment if you're feeling generous. Want to learn about some more cool, unlocalized Nintendo games that will probably never be released outside Japan? Check out my video on Nintendoji, a DSiWare dungeon crawler from Club Nintendo. Also, I have a video on Kudden Squash, a fun plus accessible obstacle course style game for the GameCube that requires no Japanese or machine translation fuss.
This is the Buddy Mission. Keep rolling the dice. Don't stop challenging your life. 'Cause you don't want regrets for what you didn't do.